Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Previous Year Question Discussion. Here in this initiative, which is called as Prelims Warm Up, we are discussing the important questions which had appeared in the previous year examination of UPSC Prelims, and hence they become very important for this year's UPSC upcoming Prelims 2020. This initiative has been brought to you by Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services, and I am Shahid Datta, the faculty for Geography and Environment at Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services. So let us start with the 5 questions for the day. The first question was asked in the year 2007, and let me read out the question. Consider the following statements. First statement is the mode of removal of a judge of a high court in India. The mode of removal of a judge of a high court in India is same as the removal of a judge in the Supreme Court. Okay, the mode of removal of a judge of a high court in India is same as that of the removal of a judge of the Supreme Court. Now, is that correct or no? We'll see that later on. Second, after retirement from the office, a permanent judge of a high court cannot plead or act in any court or before any authority in India. So you have two statements, and this question had appeared in 2007 UPSC prelims, and you have been asked to choose which out of the given statements is or are correct. So the first statement, the mode of removal of a judge of a high court in India is same as that of the removal of a judge of the Supreme Court. Is that correct? Yes, definitely. This is the first statement that has been given, that is correct. So the mode of removal of a judge of a high court in India is same as that of the removal of a judge of the Supreme Court. So first statement is correct. The second statement, after retirement from office, a permanent judge of a high court cannot plead or act in any court or before any authority in India. That is incorrect, because as you know that after retirement from the office, a permanent judge of a high court can actually plead or act in a Supreme Court or maybe in another high court. So that is possible. The first statement is correct. The second statement is incorrect. So your right answer should be A, one only. Okay. So answer for this question is A, one only. So over here I have given you the entire procedure as to how a judge can be removed, be it a judge of a high court or a judge of the Supreme Court. So first what happens? A removal motion will be signed by 100 members. If the removal motion comes up in the Lok Sabha, then it has to be signed by 100 members in case of Lok Sabha. Or if it comes up in the Rajya Sabha, then 50 members will have to sign it in case of Rajya Sabha. Okay? And this removal motion is to be submitted to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha or to the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Now, the second step will comprise of whether the Speaker or the Chairman accepts it or not. So let's say if the Speaker or the Chairman accepts it, in that case, the next step will be that the Speaker or the Chairman, let's say the Speaker of the Lok Sabha or the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, they will constitute a 3-member committee. Now this 3-member committee will investigate the charges which have been brought up against the judge. This 3-member committee will investigate the charges. If the committee finds him guilty of incapacity or misbehavior, in that case the entire impeachment process will start. This motion, that is a removal motion, must be passed by both the houses by special majority, and that is where lies the complexity, that each of the houses will have to pass this particular motion by special majority. Each of the houses individually, they will have to pass it by special majority, and hence this becomes much more difficult, much more complicated. And the last step is that the passed motion is sent to the president, and once the president has signed on that motion, automatically the judge will be removed from the post. So for this question, the right answer should be A, one only. Now let us look at another question. So today we are dealing with the questions from polity, previous year questions of polity. The next question is, what is the difference between vote on account and interim budget? So you have two very closely related statements, or two very closely related terms. One is the vote on account, the other is interim budget, and the question is asking, okay, what is the difference between vote on account and interim budget? So this question was asked in the year 2011. First statement, the provision of a vote on account is used by a regular government, while an interim budget is a provision which is used by a caretaker government. The first statement is the provision of a vote on account. It is used by a regular government, while an interim budget is a provision which is used by a caretaker government. The second statement is a vote on account only deals with the expenditure in government's budget, while an interim budget includes both expenditure and receipt. And your options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. So basically here you have been asked to differentiate between these two terms. One is the vote on account and the second is interim budget. So over here I have given you the difference between these two things. So as you can see over here in this entire photograph or this entire picture that I have put up. So over here you can see the difference which is there in between vote on account and interim budget. So you can read it yourself. I am not reading it out, but over here please understand the second statement is actually correct. A vote on account only deals with expenditure in case of the government's budget, while an interim budget includes both expenditure as well as receipt. But the first statement, the provision of a vote on account is used by a regular government, while an interim budget is a provision which is used by a caretaker government. That is incorrect. So your right answer should be B, 2B, 2 only. Okay. Next. The third question that we have, this was asked in 2011, and this question asks a deadlock between the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. A deadlock between the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha calls for a joint sitting of the parliament during the passage of which out of these bills? So this question was asked in 2012. First is ordinary legislation, second money bill, third is constitution amendment bill. So if there is a deadlock between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, in that case there will be a joint session of the parliament. But when will the joint session be held? So first is in case of ordinary legislation, will there be a joint session? Yes, in case if there's a deadlock. In case of money bill, will there be a joint session? No, because as we know that Rajya Sabha has very limited authority over money bill and they really cannot do much about money bills. So second is definitely incorrect. Third, constitution amendment bill. Now when it comes to constitution amendment bill, please remember that in case of CAB or constitution amendment bill, it has to be passed independently by both the houses, and hence if there is a deadlock, there is no provision for a joint sitting of the parliament. So third is also not there, only one. So your right answer should be A, 1 only. So over here I have given you the powers of the Lok Sabha and the powers of the Rajya Sabha. So you can go through this particular powers of Lok Sabha and powers of Rajya Sabha to know more about what should happen when there's a deadlock between these two houses. So for example, as you can see that under the powers of the Lok Sabha, they make laws on matters which are included in the union list and the concurrent list. They can introduce and enact money bills as well as non-money bills. When it comes to the powers of the Rajya Sabha, on the other hand, they consider and approve non-money bills and they suggest amendments, but they cannot do much. They can only suggest amendments to money bills. On the other hand, powers of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha both can approve constitutional amendment bills. Next, under the powers of Lok Sabha, we can get to see that they approve proposals for taxation, budgets and annual financial statements. On the other hand, in case of the powers of Rajya Sabha, we get to see they exercise control over executive by asking questions, introducing motions and resolutions. So they do not have again too much of authority over taxation, budgets and all these things. Next, similarly, in case of the Lok Sabha also, we get to see they control the executive by asking questions, supplementary questions, resolutions, motions, and of course another very important you can say advantage of the Lok Sabha over the Rajya Sabha is the no confidence motion. So that is also there, no confidence motion. Next, in case of Lok Sabha, they can amend the constitution also. They can amend the constitution also. Also, in case of Lok Sabha, we get to see that they can approve the proclamation of an emergency. So they can approve the proclamation of emergency. In case of Lok Sabha, we also get to see that they elect the president and the vice president, and they remove the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. They elect the president and the vice president, and they remove the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. Whereas in case of Rajya Sabha, we get to see they participate in the election and the removal of the president, the vice president, the judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts. It can alone initiate the procedure for the removal of the vice president. So over here, you will get to see that Rajya Sabha only has the authority over the vice president. Also, if we look at the powers of Lok Sabha, we get to see they establish committees and commissions and consider their reports. In case of the Rajya Sabha, we get to see they give the Union Parliament power to make laws on matters which are included in the state list, because this is Council of States, right? So these are the various powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. You will find it in Lakshmikant as well. So you can go through it. So for your question number 3, answer is A, ordinary legislation only. Coming to question number 4. So as you can see over here, the Rajya Sabha can only hold back money bill for a period of around 14 days. And that's it. On the other hand, when we talk about the constitution amendment bills, it has to be passed separately by both the houses. Now moving on to the next question that we have, the distribution of powers between the center and the states in the Indian Constitution. The distribution of powers between the center and the states in the Indian Constitution is based on the scheme which has been provided in which out of these acts? This question was asked in the year 2012. So the distribution of power between the center and the states, this entire concept or the scheme of distribution of power, where do we derive it from? From which out of these acts? A, the Morley-Minto reforms of 1909. Okay? Morley-Minto reforms of 1909. B, the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms of 1919. The Montagu-Chelmsford reforms of 1919. The third one, the C, that is Government of India Act 1935, and D is Indian Independence Act of 1947. So these are the various acts that we have, and from which out of these do we get to see that the distribution of power between the center and the states in case of the Indian Constitution has been derived. So when we talk about the distribution of power between the center and the states, you must be aware that in our Indian Constitution, we have 3 kind of lists. So one is the union list, under which we get to see those subjects have been included over which the union government have complete control. Similarly, you have another list which is called as a state list, over which we get to see the state government has control. And then we have a third list which is called as the concurrent list. So concurrent list consists of those subjects over which both center as well as state can pass legislations, but of course the center will have an upper hand over the states. So this entire concept of having different subjects under the union government and the state government, this we get to see was introduced in the Government of India Act of 1935, which also included provincial autonomy, like the way we get to see that the states are independent, they are autonomous, and this concept was introduced in the Government of India Act of 1935. So 4C should be the right answer. So from this Venn diagram, you can see central government, it consists of the union list, or under the central government, you have the union list, and union list consists of subjects like defense, banking, currency, foreign affairs, communication, etc. These kind of subjects should remain uniform. The legislations over these subjects should be more or less uniform throughout the country, and these are very, very essential for the country, right? That is why the central government has power to make laws on these subjects. On the other hand, when we talk about the state government, we get to see that there's another list which is called as the state list, and the subjects which are contained under the state list, over those subjects, the state government has control. For example, police, for example, trade, agriculture, irrigation, these are the subjects. And similarly, there is another list which is called as the concurrent list, and over there we get to see that both the central, that is the union government, as well as the state government, they jointly can make laws on subjects like education, forest, trade, marriage, adoption, succession, etc. So there are many such subjects. That is not important. What is important is that from which particular act do we have we derived this particular scheme of separation of subjects, that is the Government of India Act of 1935. So answer should be C for question number 4. Okay, so union list, state list, concurrent list, provincial autonomy, all of this has been derived. The last question that we have for today, that was asked in the year 2012, and this question is, okay, what is the provision to safeguard the autonomy of the Supreme Court of India? So we understand, okay, the judiciary, it should be independent, it should be autonomous. If there are interferences from the executive, in that case, it will not be able to function properly. It will not be able to give justice to the people. So what is the provision by which the autonomy of the Supreme Court of India can be maintained? This question was asked in 2012. So there are four such points which have been mentioned. Number one, while appointing the Supreme Court judges, the President of India has to consult the Chief Justice of India. Let's repeat. While appointing the Supreme Court judges, the President of India has to consult the Chief Justice of India. Is that correct? Yes. Second statement, the Supreme Court judges can be removed by the Chief Justice of India only. Please understand that is not possible because they are appointed by the President. They can only be removed by the President. So the Supreme Court judges can be removed by the Chief Justice of India only. That is definitely incorrect. So the second statement is incorrect. And if you can understand, let's say, we can actually eliminate any option which has 2 in it. So you can eliminate option D. The third statement is the salaries of the judges are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, to which the legislature does not have to vote. That is correct again, because the salaries of the judges, they are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. And as we know, this is one of the major reasons by which, or one of the major ways by which the autonomy of the judges, the independence of the judges, that can be ensured, because the legislature does not have to vote on the salaries which are being charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. Okay, so C is that is number 3 is also correct. The fourth statement is all appointments of officers and staffs of the Supreme Court of India are made by the government only after consulting the Chief Justice of India. Now, all appointments of officers and staff of the Supreme Court of India, they are not made by the government, but rather they are made by the Chief Justice only. Okay? They are made by the judges, the Chief Justice. So government does not play any role, and that is why the independence of the judges can be ensured. So fourth statement is incorrect, and wherever you have the fourth statement, you can strike that out. So you are left with only A, 1 and 3 only, and that is the right answer. So for question number 5, A should be the right answer. Okay. Over here we have a particular body which is called as NJAC, the National Judicial Appointments Commission. NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission. So we get to see that this National Judicial Appointments Commission, it was actually created in order to select, to appoint the judges of the Supreme Court, but then ultimately this body, it was scrapped by the Supreme Court itself. So this did not happen lately. This was many years back, but you should be aware about it, and hence you can have some idea about what is the collegium system, how the judges are appointed, what was NJAC, what was the problem with NJAC, the criticism of NJAC also you can read from here, or you can also do some Google work on your own. So please understand what are these bodies, NJAC and collegium system, plus the criticism of these bodies. So these things you should be aware of. Okay, so this will be your homework. Just read up a little bit on NJAC. So yes, when it comes to this particular question, statement 2 is incorrect. President removes judges, not the Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice of India can appoint officers and servants of the Supreme Court without any interference from the executive, which means the government. Okay, so with this we complete the 5 questions for the day under our prelims warm-up initiative, and we'll meet again with another video of prelims warm-up, where we will be discussing more such important previous year questions. So if you have liked the video, please like, please subscribe to AptPlus's YouTube channel and share with your friends for more such informative videos. Please also click the bell icon. So till then, stay safe, study hard, and we'll meet again with another new session. Thank you so much.
Icon, man, and my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in the Benz.